All right. It is that time again. Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my weekly tarot stream. Today we've been kind of going through the working our way through the minor arcana for folks who might not have been at the last one, which was a couple of weeks ago. We've been working our way through the minor arcana, so the part of the tarot deck that is a little bit more like the playing cards we know, that have numbers and suits and court cards. And so a few weeks ago we started by looking at the aces, and then 2 weeks ago we looked at the twos. So this week we move on to the threes, and we've tried out a couple of different formats in the past two streams. In the aces stream, I showed you the same card from 4 different decks, and in the twos stream I showed you the 4 cards from the same deck all at once. So we went with 2 different formats. I think today I'm going back to looking at the same card in all 4 decks, because I think that provides some nice contrasts as well as points of relation. So we'll get started here in just a sec. Before that though, I did want to say, let me know if there's more background noise than usual. I've got my ceiling fan on in the hopes that maybe this time I won't turn beet red and flushed by the end of this. But let me know if there's a lot of extra noise, if it's distracting, if you're able to comment. So let's get started. We are starting with the suit of air, so normally swords. Today so just a reminder. Oh, yay! Hi, Matricula. Hi, Matricula. Thank you. So just a reminder. So remembering what we're looking at here. These are all the 3 of swords, or the 3 of the suit that's equivalent to swords, in 4 different decks. This one's the Universal Weight, which is a recoloring of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. This one is the Alexander Crowley's Thoth deck. And this one is the Numinous Tarot deck. And this one's the Wooden Tarot deck. So we're going to be looking at these 4 decks throughout the whole stream, looking at the 3s in all of them. Because as you can kind of see at a glance, they offer really different interpretations of the same card. So, starting off. Right, so a word about 3s in general in the tarot deck. We started with the aces, and we talked about how the aces are 1. The aces are about unity, the focused, undifferentiated power of whatever the suit is about. And we talked about the 2s. Now the 2s are about balance. Different kinds of balance based on the suit. So we come to 3s, moving from 1 point to 2 points to 3 points. And if you think of it in terms of points, 3 is the first stable number. 3 is the first, like most stools or chairs have 4 legs, but you can have a stable seat with 3, right? So 3 tends to be a number of there's some amount of completion to it. There's some amount of stability. We don't see the same sort of everything's in tension or everything's in flux. We're trying to find balance that we do in the twos. Things are a little bit more stable. Things are a little bit more harmonious, mostly. We'll look at these swords here in just a sec. But it's stable. It's sustainable. It's able to stand on its own. It's got some harmony and a system to it now in the threes. So just a little bit of an idea of what we're working with overall. However, so not always, but sometimes there's always one, right? There's always one that proves the rule by exception. So where the other three suits are going to tend to talk about kinds of harmony, things working well together. Hey Dom dude, welcome. I'm very glad you could make it. The swords tend, as you can see here, they talk about things not in harmony, or a harmony that's very painful. So, Three of Swords and the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. It's a heart pierced by those three swords against a background of some stormy clouds and kind of pelting down rain. This is one of the most immediately, oh, well, that's not good, cards in the deck. Some of the others are also swords. Right, Dom? It's damn, well, that's not good. And the little white book that comes with the deck will say that this is about betrayal, or about being stabbed in the back, quite literally stabbed in the heart. I tend to think that there's the possibility of it being a little bit broader than that. Being about because that sounds very deliberate to me. Betrayal doesn't tend to be a word that we use for accidents, right? And I tend to think that this card can be about any kind of I don't put me on the pizza, yes. This is an intense one to start with. But I tend to think that this card can be about anything that's like a lance to your heart, like a sword to your heart, even if it's not intentional. And so rather than bringing things into harmony, this feels like a collusion of forces, of cutting words, of destructive ideas. This can be your brain ganging up on you and betraying you, your anxiety or your depression just driving the blade in deeply. But that's where it goes, and it's very, very unsubtle. So next, so don't put me on pizza. You say, someone I used to know who was into tarot used to fear this card. It's not a gentle one. It's not a happy one to see. Ooh. She saw it as you're about to lose someone. I mean, I do tend to see this, so frankly, I tend to see these cards often in the aftermath. For me, they tend to show up, and when I'm doing readings for other people, they tend to show up in the aftermath of those wounds, particularly in the aftermath of a bad relationship, when that wound is still fresh. And if they show up reversed, it tends to talk about that person healing, working on healing from that wound, from that pain. And so yeah, I don't usually see them in a predictive way like your friend did, but yes, same area, same. I see it definitely less about death than about relationships ending, particularly over cruel words, manipulative behavior, etc. So here in the Thoth deck, we see really similar imagery, right? It's not a heart, but 3 swords piercing and ripping apart a flower, maybe a white rose. Because Crowley's not subtle either, and maybe even less subtle, because a heart, everyone has a heart. Flowers are a distinctly feminine symbol. So there's an element of gendered violence here too. And I don't think that's necessarily, I see that and feel that here, but I don't think that's what Crowley intended. Just that he was an old white dude and tended to interpret emotion as feminine and reason, words, manipulation, etc. as masculine, cutting into the feminine. So I don't think his interpretation is necessarily about specifically a woman's pain, but I look at this and I always see like dudes hurting women. And the background here is even more aggressively cloudy and depressed. It feels depressed to me. It feels like I want to hide from it. I don't want to interact with it. And then in the wooden tarot, so here we have arrows instead of swords, plumes, and a much more anatomically correct heart, but still, these folks are not deviating from some of our other cards we'll look at tonight. There's a much greater range of interpretation and nuance between the decks. One of the reasons I started with this suit tonight, is because it's very easy to see the commonalities between them. This one is, again, not subtle, pierced heart, maybe even less subtle, or less beating around the bush, because it's anatomically correct. There's no too figurative ways about it. This is your beating heart pierced by arrows. So the furthest one from the traditional is the 3 of Bells from the Numinous Tarot deck. We've still got the heart. We've still got the 3 metal objects encroaching on it. But here, there's not that penetration. There's not that explicit wounding, not that explicit violence, but there is this sense of overwhelm, of this tiny little golden heart shrinking into itself as a result of the noise on all sides. And I think this is interesting. Don't Put Me on Pizza, this version, wonder if it's even darker in a way, For Whom the Bell Tolls. Maybe. So remembering that this whole suit is bells, right? Not just this card, but this whole suit is bells instead of swords. So that's not the feeling I get from it. It's more the feeling of, you know, how I know some of the folks I know are very, very sensitive to loud noises, are very sensitive to certain sensory stuff. And so I think of this as the way that being shouted at by someone I love feels. The way that hearing cutting words or hard words or belittling words that seem to be coming from all sides feels. The way that it makes me cringe in on myself and feel smaller and feel like I just want to retreat until there's nothing left to hear this, to deal with this. And I like the emphasis on sound here, on communication. Because I feel like that's a very real and legitimate part of this card that can get overlooked in some of the other interpretations. But as always, Pizza, please trust your own interpretations. Just because this evokes both literal and figurative noise for me doesn't mean that it has to for you. So, 3 of Swords in 4 different interpretations. Hey, Cacophony, hello. I hope all of you really are doing well tonight. And thank y'all again for joining me. I'm so happy to have your company. So, started off with swords, moving on to, I'm sorry, Pizza. I'm sorry you're having a hard time. Well, I know you're in the Discord, and I encourage you to, make use of the support channel when and as you feel like. I am sorry. But moving on from the swords, moving on from the pierced hearts, hopefully a little bit of distraction, the 3 of Pentacles, or the equivalent earth-related suit. So, starting off, 3 of Pentacles in the Rider-Waite, Smith, and associated decks is a stonemason doing working on detailing in what appears to be a church. So we've got a friar here and someone in some very loud clothing here, and I'm not really sure who this person is supposed to be. He looks a little bit gestury to me, but I don't think he's supposed to be. But craftsperson taking directions is the point here. Working on very detailed work that requires a lot of skill, work that has required him to have a lot of training, putting a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of skill into this. No longer, for contrast, last week or 2 weeks ago, when we were looking at the twos, the two of this suit is all about balance and flux. This is about stability and focus and putting skill into work. We're no longer juggling. We are in the flow state where we're good enough, we're experienced enough that we can make our skills do what we want. We can make it happen. We can put our training to use with confidence. And I like this as a base interpretation because stonemasonry, there are lots of valid and skill requiring crafts out there, obviously. Stonemasonry really requires a lot of skill, right? Not just the architectural aspects, but the aesthetic aspects as well. Requires training, requires concentration, requires all of that. So, this is about skill, skilled work, putting that to use. Here in the Thoth deck, we'll notice that the keyword is works, plural, which always makes me think of the faith versus works debate in Christianity. And where do we fall? I say we, but where does Christianity fall on that? I'm sure that Crowley didn't necessarily mean to evoke that, but it says that this is not just about the process of work. This is about making works. This is about creating whole things. This is about putting our skills to use. And you see here, we've got 3 spoked wheels with something that looks very pyramid-y between them. Knowing Crowley, these are like Elijah-esque wheels emitting divine light. I should probably read up more on this particular deck, but the wheels strike me here because wheelwrighting, being a wheelwright, is also a deeply skilled profession. And while here we see part of a great work in process, this cathedral, which probably won't be done in this artisan's lifetime, here we see 3 distinct products of skilled work. So the emphasis, while still being on skill, while still being on work, is a little bit different. It's about the completion, about the whole work, not just the process. Then the wooden tarot deck, for something completely different. Bones are the suit. Pizza, yeah. So the examples are smaller in scope, but I think it encourages a little bit more goal-oriented thinking. Like, what can I do? What can I make? Not just what can I be part of, but what can I achieve? What can I create myself? And that makes sense because Crowley, obligatory eye roll, was so individualistic, right? It's all about the personal will and what can be achieved with the personal will. So your works, what you've done, what you can create, over like being part of a great social and cultural plan. That's less important to Crowley than the triumph of the individual will. So, unless he's the one building the cathedral, then the social plan is more important. So, here we've got bones. We've got 3 bones. And to me, it's the last time this came up in a reading that I was doing for someone else. They're like, I'm not sure I really get this. I don't get a lot from this. Right? There's not a lot there on the surface. But to me, this looks like a joint, right? There's a bend. I think it's a leg. My anatomy skills, Pizza, I'm with you, but my anatomy skills aren't sharp enough for me to guarantee that. However, it definitely looks like some kind of joint. And that's about movement. That's what allows us to move, what allows us to do work, to achieve work. A working foundation. Yes, Pizza. But also, we can see how these sit together, right? And it's not a hand or finger where everything just sits on top of each other and bends one way. To me, it does look like a leg joint, maybe a knee joint, maybe without the patella up there, or an elbow joint, where it's meant to bend one way, but if we're not careful, if we don't use skill, if we are careless with how we move this, we can hurt ourselves. We can mess up the work we're trying to do pretty easily. So I like that emphasis as well. The care and the skill that we have to use to work with this joint, to do this work, whatever it may be, effectively, to best do it in a healthy way. So, again with skill, again with work, more of an emphasis to me on the care in the practice rather than the works or the scope of the work. Then finally, we have the 3 of Tomes in the Numinous Tarot deck. So we've got 1, 2, 3 tomes. And our student here studying. So, and it looks to me, so this is a Madison book. This is a matricula book. Our student is studying rosemary. So plants, botany, or herbology. And rosemary in particular is for remembrance, for memory. So this emphasizes not only acquiring knowledge. This isn't just acquiring knowledge for knowledge's sake, right? But as Pizza said earlier, it's a working foundation. It's acquiring the knowledge, acquiring the memories that are going to serve this person in their work. Making sure that they have the skill they need before they go do the work. So the emphasis here is on acquiring the knowledge, acquiring the skill, rather than necessarily doing the work itself. This is about getting the training, in particular. Getting the training that will allow you to do the skilled work. Absolutely. Well, and Not just. That's the thing though, Pizza. It's not just building up fundamentals. Like this isn't a 101 level course. This isn't a 101 level book. This is getting into the anatomy of the plant. This is getting into the bits and pieces, the fine detail of the discipline, of the skill, to allow this person to, just like we said here, eventually use their skill competently and easily in the way that they need to, without having to think about it, without having to run back to the books, because they'll remember. They've built the foundation and they'll remember. So, harmony in a practical way, in a coins or discs kind of way, involves going from just working to balance the logistics to knowing, I know how to do this. I have a plan. I have the skills. I've been trained. I have the right mentors or the right instructions. Let's do it. And being able to go forward with confidence, make something good, act with care and attention, etc. So, moving forward, the fire suit, normally wands, pardon me, the fire suit, wands, or stones or candles. In the twos, remember, this was about the balance that we make by exerting control. By exerting control to bring things into balance, into order. So look at the difference here in the three. Rather than forcing things, this guy is up on the high ground, up on a ledge, overlooking a very yellow body of water, but that's okay. That's all right. We're going to assume that that's the way the light's hitting it and not anything nasty in the water. But he's up on the high ground, looking out over the ships, out over the mountains, with his three staves, right? He's holding on to one, but he looks pretty chill, not grasping, not intense about it. So he can see this is about moving from having to micromanage everything to sitting back and seeing the big picture. He can see how all the things are moving. He can see how the ships are moving, what's coming, what's going, the way the pieces are playing out. But he doesn't have to be on each of them, organizing every little thing. He's confident that his will is being put into practice. Confident that the instructions he's given are being carried out. So again, moving from this quest for balance in the twos, having to really work for it, to being in the threes where things are a little bit more harmonious, where we can trust that things are going to happen as we've planned. here in the Thoth deck, again with the 3 staves, the 3 wands, and here we've got, so I like the background on this one. We've got some kind of petally trim flowing out from them. And it feels fiery, which is appropriate for wands, but it also indicates that kind of flow. There's not a lot of force here, but flow. It's very harmonious, it's very beautiful, symmetrical, measured. The wands are blooming here. There's kind of organic production happening. Progress is happening, growth is happening, and you know, we can't force a flower to bloom. So this is the kind of harmony that doesn't come with that kind of grasping, micromanaging control that we have to exert in the 2. This is stable. This has its own momentum to it. And the keyword for this card I find interesting is virtue. And when this card in particular comes up in readings, I like to point that out, partially because it doesn't say, I don't feel this as virtue in a moralistic sense, in the sense that we might talk about virtue, but virtue in something of an older sense, as in right approach, as in so one of the ancient Greek, one of the highest virtues for the ancient Greeks was excellence, arete. And I always think of that along with, by contrast, one of the highest virtues for Nordic indigenous or Nordic pagan societies was hospitality. So I think of things like guiding virtues, things that guide how we approach life, how we order and direct our lives, the things that guide everything else, the big picture stuff. So different emphasis, different approach, but again, about the big picture, about, you know, nothing that we can control with force, something that we have set into motion from afar. We watch it, we see it develop, and we let it kind of take its own momentum, take its own energy. So here, the 3 of Stones, we've got 3 stones at the one down here and 2 little ones above the tips of the antlers. But we also have 3 antlers. And this one's honestly one of the less evocative cards for itself in the deck for me. Like the right pizza, I have, so in this suit, in this deck, it's the suit of stones, but antlers crop up a lot alongside the stones in the deck. And I'm not exactly sure, because I don't think my immediate associations wouldn't be stags with fire necessarily. That's not necessarily where I'd put that elemental association. But I didn't create this deck. I kind of wonder if there's an aesthetic component to it, with the ways that the antler curves looking a little bit fiery. But I don't know. Mostly what I get out of this particular card is the triangular structure with stones kind of anchoring all the points, all the vertices. So again, going from a line or 2 points to 3 points, to something that can stand on its own, something that can be a stable structure if it has to. So a stable structure, a stable way for will to flow. Again, honestly, when this card comes up in this deck, I mostly think about my other decks and put it in the context of whatever the rest of the reading is. I don't get a huge amount out of this particular card. So, the Three of Candles in the Numinous Tarot deck. So we're back to the water side. Call back to the Rider-Waite-Smith. But instead of being on the high ground, there's this tiny little figure here on the shore, on the sand, looking out over the waters. And we can see the 3 beacons are lit. The 3 lights are lit. 3 candles lighting the way. Absolutely, pizza. Absolutely. The thing that always comes into my mind when I see this card is the beacons are lit. Gondor calls for aid. First in the movie context, and then in the pale person unveiling their belly at the beach meme, because that's me. That's me at the beach. To be a light in dark places. But either way, seeing these lights means to the person on the shore that the folks on these 3 islands are there. They're paying attention. They got the message. They're doing what they're supposed to be. The systems are working right. The instructions are getting through. This person doesn't have to go and check in at each of these stations to know that their message got through, that people are out there supporting them, doing what they're supposed to be doing. The signals are there and it's clear. And I like that. Pizza, it does feel very much like the Rider-Waite-Smith take. However, the thing I like about this is the extra emphasis on, to me, this feels like it has more emphasis on people are there to support you. People have gotten your message and are in agreement. This feels much more like directing. Standing on the high ground, looking out over. I have given instructions. The ships are moving at my command. As opposed to, I sent the message, they heard it, we're all ready to do the thing that has to get done. We're all in this together. They're there to back me up, to do their part in whatever this is. So it feels much more cooperative and less kind of dominating or one direction. But again, moving from enforcing balance to putting in place structures for will to flow easily. for harmonious implementation of will. So, moving along from fire to water, to the Three of Cups, and here when I think of kind of the quintessence of what the threes are about, when I think about harmony, when I think about the keyword that I associate with the threes in the tarot deck, this card and the Numinous Tarot are the ones that come to my mind as kind of the essence of harmony. So for me, this brings up the classic representations of the three graces, the three charities, right? And it's not just that. There's some pretty clear seasonal symbolism here. So we've got some springy flowers over here, some summery grapes and autumnal squash. Yes. So it feels like the harmony of a cycle as well as the harmony of the dance. So moving from here in all of these, we're moving from the immediate pull, the infatuation of the Two of Cups, where we feel, one heart pulling towards another, that kind of push and pull, trying to find balance in that, to three hearts working together, to emotions all flowing in the same direction, all on the same page, and creating a pattern, creating beauty together. This also feels very celebratory to me. Raising the cups in celebration, toasting, and I think that goes, but wait, pizza, you're not wrong. This can absolutely scream polyamory, and I'm sure that Mr. Waite would be shocked, I say, that you would think such a thing of his beautiful little graces. I feel that Pamela Coleman Smith might have been more amenable, but just wait, there's more. Yes, we do not subscribe to authorial intent as the end all be all here. Absolutely. But to take things in order, so here in the Thoth deck, you have just the Three Cups, which to me look very much like bunches of grapes that became chalices when they grew up, being filled from lotuses. Streams of water pouring out of lotuses. It is pizza. It is, the key word here is abundance, because we've got that flow, we've got that harmony. The water's flowing into the cups, plenty to go in the cups, and overflowing. out of the cups as well, whether down into the other cups or out into the pool of water. So this says there's enough and there's more. This says, so some of what the Two of Cups can be about, some of that urgency is there enough? We have to enjoy this. We have to grab this, because who knows how long it'll last? Because who knows if there's going to be enough, if this person's going to lose interest, if this idea is going to last, if this community will work. And what the 3 says is that there is enough. There's plenty to go around. There are other people who are willing to dance with you and make this happen and keep this going. People who are willing to join their hearts to yours. But this to me definitely emphasizes that overflowing aspect, that there's enough and more aspect, as opposed to there are people who will cooperate and celebrate with you aspect here. And then for another take, the 3 of Blooms. We've got pretty little peach branch and the 3 actual flowers, but also a fruit. So this emphasizes abundance in there's a lot of possibility, there's a lot of potential, there's a lot that's growing, but there's also something ready for the taking. There's also fruit that you can have now, as well as fruit for later, that will develop later. And I like that emphasis on it. Because both of these, so this one emphasized with the abundance and the overflowing, that gets at, okay, there's something you can enjoy now. This one, much like with the 3 of Pentacles, feels more like a process, a moment or a moment characterizing a process and interpersonal dynamics. And this one really seems to emphasize, no, out of the work you've done, out of the energy you've put into this, there's at least something that you've actually gained that's ready for the taking so far, as well as more to come. And I think that's an interesting and different emphasis there. So, pizza, I promised you more. Dum da da dum. This is not the most screamingly poly of the cards in the Numinous Tarot deck, but I definitely like to see it as such. So because my camera's a little bit blurry, we've got 3 folks here, all kind of presenting conventionally feminine to some degree or another, emptying their 3 vials into this big gorgeous cauldron here, surrounded by flowers, a rainbow in the background, which gets at all the beauty and harmony, working together, working on the same goal, the same potion, have all brought their components to the party. They're all responsible for a different part of it, and bringing them together to make something that's certainly going to be enough to feed or do the spell or whatever it's supposed to do for anyone who needs it. And surrounded by the lushness of nature the lushness of the flowers, the beauty of the mountains, the waterfall, the rainbow. There's just a lot here, which is appropriate for a card that is about having a lot, having enough and more, having people to be on the same page with you, to help you in your efforts, to work with you, to be in harmony with your own heart, your own goals. And as with so many other of the Numinous Tarot cards, I like that this card also asks us questions. It asks us to consider, not just reassuring us, yes, there are people who are on your side. There are people who want the same things you do and who will be good workers with you on the path, but asks us, what do we need to bring to the communal pot? What are we responsible for in the efforts we care about? How can we make sure that the recipe goes according to plan? And yes, pizza, what are we even making? That's the fundamental question. So it doesn't matter if we have people who are with us if we don't all know what we're making. We kind of have to figure that out. So I like that this card asks us, pulls on us to ask questions of ourselves, as well as giving us reassurance of what we have to work with, and who we have to work with. So those are the threes. And I hope among other things that kind of got an idea of the way we've shifted from seeking to find balance in the twos to forming something stable and more harmonious, actually producing something, are efforts bearing fruit in the threes. And sometimes that fruit is just setting up systems that function without as much active oversight, and that's a big deal. And sometimes that fruit is, I keep thinking about the Two of Swords, in which we're locked in a balance of tension between ideas, and how that moves from the balance of tension to the Three of Swords, in which there's wounding, there's pain, there's betrayal. And that makes me wonder if the transition there is that without I don't know, I'll have to work on that one more. I feel like there's something about when we're not willing to make a decision on our own behalf, when we're not willing to enforce our own boundaries, sometimes that leaves space for folks to hurt us more than they might otherwise. I'm still working on that. The swords are tricksy. They're often the harder suit for me to see how they do similar things to the other suits. Pizza, please share. please share. We are all about weird observations here. So, the other threes are about harmony, and they're in harmony together. Three of Swords feels more about disharmony. Yeah. Huh. Yes. So my original thoughts and feels on that were that the swords were the exception that proves the rule. The one about disharmony in the midst of the other three being harmonious. But it hadn't clicked to me that the other three are three in harmony with each other, and well, with the one on the outside. Thank you, pizza. I like that. And I'm going to ponder that more and see where that takes me. So thank you for that. If anyone else has questions or other observations, and thank you, pizza, for all your comments and your questions, and it's always so much more fun for me. I mean, I have fun rattling on about this stuff anyway, absolutely, but it's always extra specially fun when someone's asking the kinds of good questions and making the kinds of observations that you are. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Reminder, if there's anyone out there who isn't already, you can come play with us on the Social Justice Bard Discord. Matricula, my lovely mod, is one of the main and leading social justice bards, and we hang out there. We have a tarot channel, we have other channels, we talk about lots and lots of things, and I will be back with story time. Let me check the calendar. On Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and we will be talking, because it is his season, we will be talking about Lugh, the Celtic deity known as the Long-Handed. So join me. I'd love to see you. It's a cool story, and it allows me to make a lot of hand and spear puns. So, I'm gonna see who else is on. I don't see. Oh, thank you, Dom. Thank you. It was lovely to have you here as well. And thank you, Matricula, for hanging out and for hosting. I don't really see folks that I know on, so if someone has a suggestion, we'll flip over to them. Otherwise, I will just sign off for the evening and hope to see y'all on Friday. And if not, maybe next week. Next week is Dragon Con, so I may not be streaming because I may be packing and preparing. Oh! Apple Pie's on? Is she's Oh My Apple Pie, right? So let's see if that worked. Yes. Okay, so we are switching over there. Except I'm hosting, not rating. All right, have fun. We're gonna go see Oh My Apple Pie. Bye, y'all.